Round two with Dad. Here we go, Dad. You get asked all the time about leadership.
Yes, sir.
And you get asked questions all day, every day. First question for you. Now that we're back together,
Now
because you
you're
look
asking
amazing.
me questions.
First question for you, because I think this is going to be a really great setup for this conversation. Is what's one of the biggest questions you're getting
Right.
from leaders around the country? Whether they call you, you had 3 calls this morning.
Right.
You had 12 last night.
Yes, sir.
And so that's what you're doing, is you're spending time with high capacity, high quality leaders on the phone all day, every day. What's the question? What's one of the main questions that they're asking right now?
Well, I think in leadership minds is how do we develop leaders? It's more on leadership development. And in the church world, when we hire staff, and so I get asked questions in relationship to church, is we hire staff to do jobs or ministries. And so after we hire them, we let them do their ministry, and that's good, but who's walking with the staff to develop them in the culture that they're in? See, you can get all kinds of development through podcasts, through books, all those things. And those are not bad things, but they're not in the culture that the staff would be working in. So in essence, how am I intentionally developing a staff person to be the best that they can be within the culture that they're serving?
When you're developing someone and you're trying to learn about the culture, is that the first step, learning about the culture before you develop them?
Right. Culture is, they say this, culture eats a strategy for breakfast. You can have the best strategy in the world. In the wrong culture, it's not going to work. And so understanding where you are and who you are, where God's placed you, is a key. And then secondly is this, within the culture, how can we help that person to be the best that God's made them to be? And what happens is, in ministry, clarity is kindness. And do I care enough about a person in the development process to be straight with them? And a lot of times we would say, well, that's kind of pretty maybe hard or too straightforward. And I would say tone is important, but clarity is kindness. So if I can be clear with you about where I perceive you to be in the development process, in the culture that you're in, and then and be intentional about how to develop you, and we're doing it together, I'm in this game with you, then wow, where can we go as an individual and as a team?
How do you deal with someone that's been given to you versus somebody that you go and recruit? Because a lot of times leaders will come in and they'll have to work with who's with them, who's right around them.
Right.
Versus they go and find somebody and bring them in. How do you differentiate, or how can you tell that somebody's going to go with you, or that they're, does that make sense?
No,
because there's a
don't
lot of
make any
pressure
sense.
around
That
it.
is one of the greatest questions you could ask. I think it's twofold. One is this. When you go into an organization and you're the leader or you're a teammate, let's say you're me, and you go into an organization that I went into in December. Yeah. Been in the church world for 42 years. I go work for Scott Dawson Evangelistic Association in Birmingham. I don't know hardly any of the staff. They're all much younger than me. So what do? Do I come in and bang? I've been doing ministry 42 years, bang my chest, and you listen to me? Or you look at my title, chief of staff? I mean, what is that going to do? Or do I say, I'm going to I'm going to learn the people, to love them, to earn the right to lead them. And I'm going to come in and learn their name, love them for who they are, and over time earn the right to lead them. There's an art, I believe, of taking people with you. As a staff, there's an art of taking people with you. And as a church or an organization, there's an art of taking people with you. And so how do I do that? One, I've got to learn them, to love them, to earn the right to lead them. Then they've got to, as I do that, they trust my heart. And I don't care if I've hired a staff person or I've inherited a staff person. They've got to trust the leader's heart. And as they trust the leader's heart, they got to understand why they're doing what they're doing. They got to first trust you, but then they got to understand why. And then the how's got to be easy enough to understand that it's a little bit at a time. You keep enlarging the how as you're enlarging your why. And then they got to see it. They got to see your why. They got to understand their how, and they got to know the part that they play. And it's got to be clear, the part that they play. It's got to be clear. Because what happens is, in the journey of development of a staff, whether you've inherited it or you've recruited it, clarity in the part that they play is crucial. Because that part in an organization, they got to say, my part is vital. Who's more vital on a football team? Well, the person who has the football. Because you got to have the football to score. So who scores the most on the football team with the ball? Well, it's the quarterback. Most people say the quarterback's the most important person on the team. Well, they can't get the ball unless the center gives it to them. Because the center has the ball before the quarterback has the ball. Well, who has the ball before the center? The manager does. Because the manager gets the ball out of the box, airs it up, gives it to the center, who gives it to the quarterback. So is the manager more important than, I say they all have a crucial part to play on that team. So if I am going to take people with me, the art of taking people with me, that's what you're asking, whether I've inherited it or I've recruited it, is one, I've got to learn them, love them to earn the right to lead them. And as they trust my heart, they've got to understand why they're doing what they're doing. They've got to buy into the how. And as the why grows, the how grows. And they got to see the picture of what it looks like. They got to know and be clear of the part that they play. And at the end of the day, we got to party all the time. We got to celebrate what God's doing in and through us as individuals, but us as a team. So that's kind of the lane I would look at.
Okay, so, but it's different, right, if you have more people involved? Meaning, let's say you're talking about an organization that's got 5,000 people in it.
Yes, sir.
Versus an organization that has 100 people in it. It's different, right?
Yes.
For everyone? Or is it the same equation?
I think it's the same equation, but as you get larger, you got to get smaller. So every one person feels valuable. What happens as you get larger, if you stay organized the same, then somebody's going to get lost in the process. So as I look at the organization and the team, if you will, to make sure everybody's getting a touch. It's like a church running 100 or a church running 40,000. There's no difference, but there's a lot of difference, right? Mm-hmm. There's no difference in this. They're all made up of a bunch of ones. Yeah. Which need to feel valuable. Mm-hmm. Because everybody plays a huge part. Remember, everybody's parts matters. So if I have this many or I have this many, if I have 40,000 in my church, how do I break it down to where everybody feels important, that their part's crucial? And we know them, we know their name, we care for them, and we miss them. See, spirituality, Trevor, it runs in two lanes in the church world. It's informational, right? That we got to know God's heart. We got to hide it in our heart that we might not sin against the Lord. Second side of it is relational. They need to be known. They got to know their name. We got to care for them, and then we got to miss them. So how do I get it small enough as they get larger that they know the information and they know the relationship? They have relationships, and then you have transformation. And so, I think that's for if you have a team, a football team. How does everybody on that team, from the manager to the head coach, feel their part that they play is crucial? Yeah. And they all go down the field together.
I think they got to know it because they hear it too.
Right.
And they're valued as such.
Right.
So as you think about the 40,000 person organization or church and the 100 person church, do you think it in terms of it's 400 100s? Meaning like it's 400 100 person networks? Or how do you break 40,000 down for the 100 and make it smaller as you get bigger? It's probably harder.
Well,
as you get bigger, right? Because you have to fight for it. It is,
but you still got to be more intentional. And as a church, let's take a church.
Yes.
All right, 40,000 people in a church doesn't mean they're all adults. They're preschoolers, children, middle schoolers and high schoolers, young adults, all the way to senior adults, right? Right. So the ratios per leader to people get small. I got to have fewer people that I got to keep up with when they're in preschool because they can't take care of themselves, right? As they get older, the ratios can be a lot bigger because adults can take care of themselves, but there's still a max how many people someone can lead or someone can build a relationship with. Like your church, Ever Church just started, basically about a year and a half ago. So how can you continue to grow? As you get large, you got to get smaller. Because you being the lead communicator, pastor, and you got a bunch of volunteer staff because you don't have enough fundage right now to pay anybody, basically. But how do I organize it to where there's pockets of leaders that I'm leading that they lead, where we're all speaking the same language to develop the culture that you were talking about that all looks the same. Mm-hmm. That's the key to breaking it down in such a way to where my leaders that I'm responsible for speak the same language that I'm speaking, so we're all understanding with clarity who we are and where we're going. And when you do that, and it's repetition, if you will. I have a friend of mine named David Landeth who used to always ask me. He was a pastor at a church in Nashville. He said, "Jeff, you're telling these people the same thing all the time." I said, "Absolutely." You know why? Because I want them to know it so well, that they're speaking the same language to the people that they're leading. And then when that happens, look what happens our culture. We're going down the field together. So I think the key is the art of taking people with you, all right, is important. Not everybody's going to go to Jordan like Moses. He didn't go to the promised land, all right? Not everybody went. But here's the key is you got to know them, you got to love them, and then you got to earn the right to lead them. And then as you do that, you're developing. They understand your character. And as they understand their character, then you got to know. They got to know why, how, what does it look like, what the part they play is, and you got to party with them all the time. And as you do that, as you're getting larger, you got to get smaller. Everybody's made up of a bunch of ones, right? You got to make a bunch of ones, and so the ratio's got to be where we have people taking care of people. Ephesians 4, and I know this is not all this church world, but I think it goes for just anybody, really. Ephesians 4 says, we're to equip the saints for the work of the ministry. Why is that? It's because as we equip people, they are equipping people. Right? Mm-hmm. As we equip it, and then they say, man, look how I'm being used. And they feel fulfilled. And they're better stewards of what God's given them in their life. And as they're pouring into others.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
well, I said a lot there.
You did, but what most people don't realize, or they're even crippled by, I think sometimes, is where do I begin?
Right.
So, if they are a new staff member that have people underneath them, or they're a new pastor, or they're just a pastor that doesn't like the status quo and doesn't like what's become of their church.
Right.
Or their organization, doesn't matter. Any leader, maybe they want to adjust. And they haven't done a lot of the things that you said because they've maybe been focused on the business or maybe just what they get paid to do, or, you know what I mean? Like they've been maybe even focusing and using their skills. So when you think about where do I even begin, I think it's really valuable because what I'm even hearing is where you begin. And I've watched you. You don't begin the same place with people because where you begin is not with how to solve the problem, but you begin with the problem.
Right.
Or you begin to understand how it became a problem. Or you always try to understand for maybe even 50% of the conversation you're trying to understand.
Right. I get this question asked me. Lovingood, a lot of places you've been to, they've grown. We want to grow like this. We want to grow like, and I'm like, whoa. You got to go slow to go fast.
Yeah.
You got to go slow to go fast, and you got to learn people, and you got to care for people and know who they are. And there's a relational coinage that is built, and then to be walking with that person and earn the right to be heard by that person, and then dream a dream together of what could happen. We got to define our true reality. And sometimes that's scary. And we don't like to do that. Yeah. But if we're going to get better, if we're going to go somewhere, it's best to determine where we are. You know, I'm in Denver today. You know, I woke up the other day in Oklahoma City, and I'm like, where am I? Well, it's pretty good to determine where you are. But I think at a church or organization, as a leader, how do I determine where I am? And then, God, what do you want to do with me? What's as a leader? And then what's my vision? What's the dream? All right, now I make friends, build relationships. And then as I build relationships and know people and they know my heart, and then you start developing. You go from there. But the front end's tough, and it takes a little while. That's why you got to go slow to go fast. You got to build I know when I watch buildings being built, the footers, you know, I'm like, when is the building ever going to, when am I going to see walls or the roof? And it takes forever. But I have to have footers and then concrete and all the stuff. You know, first I got to have plans, and then it goes from there. And that's like an organization. You know, how do I start here to develop?
How much time do you think that takes? Because
I don't think you can put a time period on it. We all want it because we live in a society that wants it now. Yeah. You know, deferred gratification is a term that we have lost. Right. And so, I mean, I have young guys talking to me all the time, saying, let's go, Lovingood, let's go, Lovingood. I'm like, wait a second, time out here. Earn the right to go. Moses taking the Israelites to the promised land. And I know this is another biblical relation. You know, I'm sorry. It took a while. Yeah. And they did a lot of going around just to go very short ways. but it was a development process in them to take them there.
Yeah.
What's God want to do in my life and in the organization's life or in the church's life to go where God wants us to go? It might take a while. And then again, it might not take long at all. There's some places I've been to, Trevor, where I was wowed how quickly it changed. The other places I've been, like, it took a lot longer than I thought, but at the end of the day, it was so much better than what I could have imagined.
You use this term that I think is lost. And so when you say it, I always want to get you to define it for people, because I have to even remind myself of what you mean.
Right.
Because it's, I don't even know where you got this. So maybe you can talk about where you got this. You say relational coinage.
Right.
Okay, so I think it's really valuable
Right.
for everyone to actually understand.
Right.
What do you mean by relational coinage? Because some people think they know what that means,
Right.
but I don't think they do.
Well, it's like with your kids. I don't get to be around your kids long, little bits at a time. So every time I come to Denver, they're relearning Poppy. All right. And so Leo's a little slower to buy in to you. London and Zeke, different in the relational coinage. But when bought in, they're all in. Leo, slow. I saw him when I got here. He didn't want to get out of the bed. London, Zeke comes to see Poppy. Leo didn't want to. All right, I got it. So what can I do in my relationship with Leo to earn Leo's approval? How can I put coins in Leo to say, hey, I really love Poppy. And so I did a little at a time to pour into Leo. And then last night he was hugging on me and encouraging me and, love. More than London or Zeke, which they were great. What I mean by relationship coinage is how can I pour in coins into someone's life, if you will, right? And then as I pour in and love and encourage the person or the organization, then we've built a bond, right? But what happens on the flip side of that, when you start taking coins, when you don't fall through or when you do things that they don't like or respect or appreciate, or you've told a lie, or you said they're disappointing you, whatever, and you've not come to them and said, I'm sorry, I apologize. You take coins away from that relationship. And when coins, in an organization, when coins go away, somebody's got to go. You know what I'm saying? Because you've earned the right, you've lost the right to lead. But if I pour into that person and we're bonded, then as I take coins out, there's more coins to take out, if you will. And then because we're all going to make mistakes. We're not always going to bat 1,000 here. So there's going to be mistakes made, but we've poured into each other. There's trust built, and they give me the benefit of the doubt.
Because trust costs something.
Costs something.
And so the reason you use the word coin, I believe, is because when you put coins into someone's life, that is you adding value to their lives. They feel valuable because of what you're doing.
Right. You don't use people as a means to an end.
Right.
You're not building a relationship just to put coins in.
Right.
It just happens. If people view you as, hey, he's doing that to put coins in me, so he's going to get something out of me.
That's transactional.
That's pseudo care.
Yeah, fake.
It's fake. But if they feel genuine coins, if you will, and you have a genuine relationship, and then then it's called do life together.
Yeah. So in a lot of ways, it's serving them.
Right. And I think as a leader in a church organization is how do I serve? How do I lead? How do I build into? And when you do that, you develop coins.
Yeah.
You don't do that to develop coins, but it just happens.
Yeah.
But you don't use people as a means to an end. That's why if you love and care and know them and support them, then trust is built. And then you could take people with you. If you don't do the front end and you want instant response, you could get an instant response, but it's not going to last forever.
Yeah. Okay, so when it's a total mindset on the front end.
Right.
Because what you're talking about is, and who you're talking to most of the time, are people that want outcomes.
Yes.
I want to get this outcome. I want to get that certain outcome.
Right.
But you specifically are in the development business.
Right.
In a unique
Right.
way to say that, or a different way to say that. You develop people. You help them become. You help them develop. You help them grow.
Right.
So they may get that outcome, but what I've seen a lot of times is when you develop somebody, you actually get a better, even different outcome than they originally wanted.
Right. I think
if they'll actually walk with you. But keep going.
I think you're right. I think the word outcome is a different term.
Okay.
I think we have to define maybe what we desire as the outcome. Because if we don't, then your outcome, your thinking might be a little different than mine. That's why our culture and who we are is so important. Because what do we see? What do we desire in a relationship? What do we desire in the church? What do we desire in the company? The ROI. Now, okay, what is the ROI? Return on my investment. Is it more money? Is it a bigger facility? Is it more people? I don't know. I mean, but it's important, I think, to define that. You know, I think in my world it's been defined as I'm going to live out the Great Commission. Your podcast listeners, what is that? It's found in Matthew. Is I'm to go. And Matthew is a gospel in the Bible. Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. All right. In the gospel in the New Testament, chapter 28, is I want to go and make disciples. And with that, I'm going on a mission to reach people for the cause of Christ. Now, my goal is, as I go on a mission to reach people for the cause of Christ, is the Lord's doing it through me, and I want to empower others to be on the same mission with me. That's the way we can reach more people. Yeah. But in that, I'm not doing it all. I'm equipping others to do that with me. Yeah. Same thing on the football team. Same thing in a company. Is how can I empower others in the same culture to be on the same mission with me?
So when you think in development,
yes, sir.
What is your?
You get a lot out of me today.
What is your process in development?
My
because
process,
it's different every time, but
right,
it's actually not.
No. It's my process of development is this: define reality. All right, define reality. Understand where we're going. And then let's talk about the process to get there. It's like a football player. The first thing on in the first day of fall camp, they get in a stance and they start. But even before that, Nick Saban would say, well, let's look at your socks. How high are your socks going to go? What's your uniform going to look like? What's your presentation? What are we going to look like before we get to the field? And then how are we going to handle ourselves when we get to the field? More than just getting the stance and start. And so what I like to do with a person is define our true reality. Here's where we are, and here's who we are. Here's how we're going to handle ourselves. And here's my desire to go with you. My desire is you're not going together. Is I'm going to go with you. So you don't feel alone. And then I'm going to earn the right in my relationship to you to go with you. So you trust me. All right? Then we watch film all the time. And your people in your podcast say, what does that mean? What if it's, I watch what you do all the time. You ever seen the movie Hoosiers?
Yeah, definitely.
You like the movie Hoosiers?
Yeah, it's great.
Gene Hackman just passed away. He was the coach in the movie Hoosiers. In the movie Hoosiers, he was trying to develop this team. Old school team. They were terrible. And so in the season, they got incrementally better because they bought into the culture of the team more than just winning. And in the game, one of the last games, they were going to play against a team that was really good, had a really good shooter. And Gene Hackman had a guy on his team that couldn't shoot, but he could play good defense. And he told the young man, I want you to guard their best shooter. I want you to guard him so close that you know the brand of gum that he's chewing. At the end of the game, the young man fouled out. Played great defense. At the end of the game, he fouled out. He walked by Gene Hackman and he said this, Dentine. I want, as a leader, to walk with you so close, I know the gum that you're chewing. But what happens is, as leaders, we want to be so far removed. We want to coach from afar. We want to lead from afar. A shepherd guarding the sheep, he would put the sheep in the cave. He would lay in front of the door of the cave. Why? To protect the sheep. And then if a sheep gets loose, then he goes and gets the sheep and literally breaks the sheep's legs and puts it over his shoulders and carries the sheep. And that seems brutal. Two things happen. One is this, he went and got that one sheep. Because everyone matters. He went and got the one sheep, broke his leg to discipline that sheep, to never do that again. And then he carried the sheep to show love to the sheep. That's how you develop leaders. You got to go with them. You got to know them. You got to protect them. You got to be willing to discipline them. But then in the backside of it, you got to show them you love them.
When someone's thinking about
you like that, didn't you?
when someone's thinking about disciplining them, can you define what that should or could look like? Because that's a great question. I get this a lot. Here's what happens. I had this young staff person call me the other day. Said, Jeff, I want you to coach me on some stuff. I said, well, before we get to that, do you want me to tell you what you want to hear, or do you want me to tell you the truth? I'm defining my true reality right here. Because if you want me to tell you what you want to hear, then I'm not your man. But if you want me to tell you what I think the reality is, and you want me to lean into you a little bit for you to get better, then we can go there. He said, well, I want the latter. I said, well, listen to me. If I'm going to take time to develop you, and we're going to go in this together, then I'm going to lean into you. And I'm going to nick you a little bit. I'm going to be hard on you a little bit. But if I'm hard on you, then it shows you that I really do care about you. If I pseudo care about you, then I'm going to tell you what you want to hear, and then I'm going to go away. And that's what we do. We want people to like us as leaders.
we don't want people to love us. Now, there's a difference. If I like you, I'm going to tell you what you want to hear and go get me a coffee, or I don't like coffee, but water. Yeah, sure. You go get coffee. But if you want people to love you, then, hey, I'm going to lean into you. I'm going to challenge you. And at the end of the day, you're going to love that response, that interaction, and we're going to get better. And then our relationship's going to grow. And so I think discipline is loving people enough to be clear with them, which is actually kind to them.
So when you're thinking about helping somebody lead an organization.
Yes, sir.
And you kind of bring all that we're talking about together a little bit. And you were to wrap up with a question that you get asked a lot right now, maybe even a state of the questions that you're getting asked right now.
Right.
What kind of questions are you getting asked right now from high capacity leaders from around the country?
I get asked, how do you grow an organization? How do you, whether it's a company, whether it's a church, whether it's a ball team, that's the question I get asked, is about growth. And that's why I say the ROI. People want the ROI. We live in a Western culture that likes to win. Yeah. But we don't like the process to get to the win. Right. The joy is in the journey, not always just in the W. And so how do I get there and find little W's along the way? So, man, when we arrive, I'm going to ask the question, have you arrived? What is arriving? What does that mean? In the spiritual mindset, sanctification is the process. Glorification is the arriving. That's heaven. In a company, developing the company is the process. What is arriving? How much is too much? Right. A ball team. I've had a chance to be on 3 national championships when I was in college. I was great friends, my mentor, Ken Sparks, the 5th winningest coach of all time. Past Bear Bryant. I remember after our 3rd national championship, I looked around and I said, is this it? And he said, Jeff, if you're thinking this is it, you've missed the whole thing. You missed the whole thing. It's a part of the process of development as an individual and the team. So I get asked that question a lot. Is growth, winning, ROI, how do we get there? And I focus on where is there? And then how do we develop, grow as a person, as an organization, as a team, as a church, and enjoy the sanctification process or the journey, if you weren't in the church world, if you will.
Last thought, I think, before we wrap up, is this.
So I'm giving you a lot today.
Yeah. You've come to play today, which is good. That's good. I'm proud of you.
Thank you. I like to make you proud of me.
I'm proud of you. Okay, so when you're trying to get somebody to know where they're going, so
right,
it's like, okay, you want to go there, but you grow here.
Right.
How do you repurpose or revalue their values to be able to do that now?
I think incremental stages. That's why I tell young leaders is learn how to win early, win often, gain confidence and trust. That's why you play Bowling Green the first game if you're Alabama or Tennessee. Why? You're building confidence and trust, incremental wins. So it builds confidence and trust. If you get busy looking at the way up here, you know what I'm saying? You might be Alabama you're thinking about a national championship, but Nick Saban was thinking about beating whomever.
Yeah, how they look. Let's win how we look first.
Let's get a stance.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Let's get lined up.
Form. You won the form today.
Yes.
You won effort today.
But here's the deal. But what happens as leaders, do we take time of recognizing when they do?
Yes. Yes.
So they repeat the behavior that you desire.
Right.
Or they desire.
Right.
To help them get to where they want to go or we want to go. And, you know, a lot of people don't want. We talk about being comes before doing, and I believe that. Our being comes before doing, our being should catapult us to doing. Faith without works is dead, like we say in James, all right? So in essence, our faith should lead us to works. Our faith, our being should not make us lazy. You know what I'm saying? We love margin, which margin helps us to dream about where we're going, but we actually got to get out of the locker room and go play. It should make us lazier. It should make us wiser and more intentional. What happens, I think, sometimes if we're not careful, we become lazy in our pseudo developing being, that we never get to practice what we're being taught in the quiet times. And so if we could learn to practice what we're being taught in the quiet times and are being developing, that would help us have more confidence in who we are and where we're going. Yeah. That's a big statement, but that's a true statement.
And in reality, if you have people with you and you're going as the same direction, and if you begin to celebrate the things that you think that are in their lives, even just sometimes just showing up and being present. Mm-hmm. Hey, I want to celebrate you in that. I think a lot of times leaders don't celebrate the small things enough, and they never get to the big things because they don't celebrate the small things.
Totally. We have forgotten.
Come on.
We have forgotten the art of taking people with you.
Oof.
We don't do it.
Is that the next book title?
That is something I'm wrestling with a lot, is, the art of taking people with you, and in companies, on teams, in churches, and it's a process, because we have lost the deferred gratification mindset. We have lost the joy in the journey, the sanctification, if you will. And so I think when we learn to develop others, we develop ourselves.
Mm. And if
or
you
we're developed, that's better.
Right, yeah, and then exactly. That's good. Any last thought before we wrap up?
Well, my last thought is we've had us a good morning. I'm getting ready to beat you hunting and golf.
That'd be good.
And if you go to practice, we got to go now because it's 10 till.
We get warm up. Thank you guys for being the Full Vantage Podcast. Dad, love you.
Peace.
Thanks for being here in Denver. We'll title this one probably "The Art of Taking People with You." That'll be good. Next book title. That'll be good. See you guys later. Let's go together. See ya.